You know the phrase that pays. Yo, it's the golden hour. It's yeah. Oh, it's a callback over there in the center square. I love it. Shout out to the protector, guys. I feel like it's deja vu all over again. If you see these three smiling angelic countenances, that must mean a couple things. One, it must be Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST. And also that must mean it must be pitch me. I must be dreaming time. That's right. The boys of summer have returned. Pencil to pencil is back on your video scope. Let's do some introductions. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I am a cartoonist in good standing. And guys, I wear a lot of hats besides this one. I am on the board of the National Cartoon Society. I'm the Philadelphia chapter chair. And I am also a graphic novelist with a series at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint. Leon, Worst Friends Forever is the newest volume of my Leon series in stores now. Tell them, Steve Conley.
Cop it. Why don't you?
Yes, I love it. Yes, I love it when a plan comes together, Hannibal. Guys, I would be remiss. I would be in remission if I did not introduce my cohort, co-conspirator, and co-compatriot. He is in title contention. He beat Haystacks Calhoun last week in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and he's coming for the webcomic World Heavyweight Championship belt. That's right. Make the discount double check motion. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, it's so good to see you.
Yes.
I am back from Heroes Con, and boy, is my right hand tired.
Pause.
My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic, your 78th favorite webcomic, The Middle Age, which you can read over at middleagecomic.com. It's over on the Webtoons, the Tapas, the Go Comics, etc. I also make the TTRPG stuff. If you play the Dungeons and or the Dragons, you can check out my stuff over at steveconley.com. Nice. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Miracle Mark Maker, the Majestic, the Magnanimous, the something else with an M, Mike Manley.
I like that.
The Magnificent One, oh Magnificent One.
That's right.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Mike.
Your, drawer of childhoods, as I have become known around these parts.
I love it. Mike, we were just talking to Steve off stage about what is it? We're filthy. We're lousy with cons these days. And Mr. Conley just came back from Heroes Con. And before I asked Steve for a road report, we know that there are certain shows that have certain vibes to them, right? and all the pros know, and even a lot of the fans know where they're going because of the kind of stuff they're into. And Heroes Con has always been known as like a strong mom and pop show with a lot of community built up. Steve, is that the case? And was that on display last weekend?
Absolutely. It is. Shelton Drum is the founder and daddy of the show. He has Heroes Aren't Hard to Find as a comic shop in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's the owner of that shop, and you can tell conventions that are run by comic shop owners, they kind of have their heart is in the right place. They didn't come to this from the outside like, hey, comics are big, and my vape shop's not doing too well. My VCR store folded. And so they get into the Comic-Con business, and these folks really know their stuff, and because they read the comics and the focus is that way. And Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, and Heroes Con is even more so that, because there's no media guests, no voice actors. It is thick with cartoonists, and it's an art convention. Books sell well. There's still print walls, but it's not like every third booth is like a soap vendor or something like that.
Get your Jedi soap.
Oh, I love it.
I've been to some of those shows where it's like, oh wow, that person it's a maker convention, but it's not a comic convention. This one, Heroes Con, is a comic convention. And I saw some pencilers. I saw Marshall Lakes. I saw El Jamal. I saw JRD, and I saw the entire Dean's Institute.
I like the Dean's Institute. I got my HVAC certs from the Dean's Institute. I could do heating and cooling repair now.
That was great. It was a wonderful show. I have too many books now. My table is covered with books. I need to figure out. I have to go vertical now. So that's my whole thing. That's my personal takeaway. But it's a great show.
Like a cage, one of those cages.
At least one of those 4-tier things. That it's like not quite a spinner rack, but something. I need height.
I keep hearing, and this is somebody finally gave it a name. The like the Mr. Softy truck setup. Like you have stuff all around you, and your face is in a window in the middle.
Yeah, because I saw that with I check out these YouTube channels where it's someone who's at an artist alley somewhere, and their prints are behind the table. They're in their sorted totes where they know where everything is, and the outside of the wall is really number 5, number 6, number 7. Just give them a number, they know which one to get. The prices are on the outside. It really does look like an ice cream truck.
No, I got a bomb pop and a cone with Jimmy's. Thanks. So here's the $100,000 question. How were sales?
Sales were good. My table didn't say, if you want to make money at I think at Heroes Con, the focus for us as cartoonists is art. You should be accepting commissions. You should line up commissions beforehand. That's a big thing that changed the dynamic of a lot of these shows, because initially the people would have the VIP tickets and they would just burst through the door making a beeline for George Perez's table or something like that. But now people really line up those commissions, and they kind of go to the convention to pick them up.
Right.
But people still take commissions, and so there is still that people hurrying to get there early in the morning. But my books did well. My table wasn't really focusing on the artwork, which you kind of, I hadn't learned my lesson with just how many books I had. But the books did well. Not only did the graphic novels, the middle-age collections, but also the game books. So it was a wonderful show. I did well. I'm excited to go back next year.
Wonderful. And also, I may say, you don't look too crispy around the edges. You look good to go. No con crud followed you home.
No, like that thing I said about having a little saline spray keeps things from keeps me from being too vulnerable. But I did avoid some people. Some people had that kind of like I was like leaning way far away from it. So Mike, you have a convention. You've lured the NCS to your neighborhood, haven't you?
Oh yeah, the American Library Association conference is in Philly this year, and downtown, and it's a giant deal. And the National Cartoonist Society is going to have a giant space on the show floor. I'm very excited about it. I also have some Scholastic business on the floor that weekend too. But want to basically be in this element to meet all the educators and the librarians. Because the vibe is a lot different from a comic book convention. They'll run up right up to you like, oh my God, can we take a selfie? This is amazing. But I'm very excited about it, and I hope to give you guys a good report next week. So also, hey, Mike, speaking of heroes, you've done heroes before, haven't you?
Like 2005, something a long time ago.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like kind of close to Philly, but it isn't.
No,
You know
I drove. That was a long drive. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's like 9 hours or something like that, right? That's a pedal pusher right there.
Because if some cop saw me with an out-of-state plate, he's like, "Woo!"
You got a ticket? Oh man, that's worth. Somebody's getting jacked on a commission that weekend. You got to pay for that. But speaking of conventions and the other side of the exhibition table, I'm very excited to talk about our guest tonight. Let me find my graphic. Where is he? Buz Hasson's with us tonight, and look at I got all this crap on the screen. I'm sorry. Who is a longtime buddy, and I'm a little remiss that we're just getting the buzz, and we're going to have a really fantastic talk. It seems like a lot of the guests that we've been having on the past couple of months have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like triple threats, quadruple threats. People who are like self-publishing, or they're publishers in self-publishers. They make movies, they're animators, they're doing this, that, and the other. They're at every show, every weekend. And I almost feel like that's the new kind of like Rubik's Cube of being a cartoonist these days. Like you have to have your fingers in a lot of pies. Pause. What a natural reason to have Buz on to talk about his properties, his IPs, his very interesting road through comics and illustration in film and other media, and and also the magic art of tattooing. So there's a lot on his plate. There's a lot going on. So I've said too much. All right, Buz, prepare for rendering. Please welcome to Pencil, Buz Hasson. Ping!
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's the magic. Thank you. It's the magic of rendering. Look at that. You've been rendered. So, Buz, thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited that we could have you on. Especially, like I said, I've been really excited about. I think we've been knocking it out the park all year, like real rap. Like every week of Pencil to Pencil has been amazing. And I can't just blame us. I mean, come on. But it's just also the chat is really lively. The conversations are really, really interesting, and we're having a really eclectic mix of guests. So welcome to that pantheon, Buz.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I respect all you guys so much. So being here is like a real honor. Thank you.
Oh man, you're going to make me blush, and that's hard with my complexion. So let's kind of start, not at the beginning, but let's start with the right now. I ask this once in a while, Buz, what's on your plate right now?
Right now, I've been doing a lot of horror license covers the last few years or so, maybe 5. A lot of different cool stuff. I grew up, renting in the video store. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like I never thought they'd make a comic book for Return of the Living Dead or for Fright Night. I mean, they have, but I always wanted to do that kind of stuff. I just never knew how it happened, but that's kind of what I've been working on. I'm always doing a lot of commissions, and I'm tattooing 5 days a week. So staying pretty busy with that stuff. Yeah.
Wow. And I don't know. I'm going to show my ignorance. I don't know a lot about the tattoo world. I have a lot of buddies who are tattoo artists. Yeah. And I just know the modern demand for tattoo artists is crazy, right? It kind of went from a thing like, oh, you had to go down to South Street in Philly,
right?
And pound a couple of tall boys, and then
Oh yeah, it's a wild bunch. Especially down there on Arch Street, you know what I mean?
So now, there's whole conventions just for tattoo art.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, so I was just going to maybe ask how all of these worlds kind of overlap in interesting ways. I'm sure probably even with your clients, they probably
Completely.
intersect.
Yeah. I got into tattooing through skateboarding. I was a skateboarder, and I started to see in Thrasher magazine, they were all tattooed.
Mm.
I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then I would run into a few guys that would have like a nice tattoo. And this is the mid 90s. So there's no cell phones or in social media to like discover anything. The grocery store had a couple tattoo magazines, and I would pick that stuff up. And then a couple of guys would be like, oh, this guy's really good over here, you know, and then I'd go in the shop and they were like, what do you want? You know, and they would, it's like, whoa, you know, like it was a rough crowd, you know. I was not ready for that. I was very sheltered. You know, I pretended to be a Ninja Turtle till I was 15. You know what I mean? Like, but it was, I was enamored by skateboard art and like punk rock and metal and MTV and all that stuff. And so that's what led me to it. Ironically, when I got into tattooing, I realized there was a major crossover element I had not put together, which was growing up playing D&D. There was an illustrator in the early books named Greg Irons. And Greg Irons went on to become a tattoo artist. Now, he died young, so he didn't get a big career out of it. But he literally, Greg Irons changed the entire tattoo game by drawing things three-dimensionally. Everything was flat before that and like 3 colors.
Yeah.
Greg came in and was, I mean, he wasn't even using rubber gloves back then. Like he was just, I swear to God, there's pictures of.
Yeah.
But he changed the game. He was doing the Hokusai waves, but they had like funnel depth in them. He was doing stippling, like from inking. And it was when I discovered that, I was like, that's where like this brainchild in myself is kind of coming from. I was influenced by the D&D art for so many years, then getting into tattooing. And then I had a great mentor named Bob Montana who knew Greg Irons. And he had showed me his art and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, I went out and got the Skull comics and the Slow Death and all these like indie books he had done in the San Francisco, you know, indie comic boom. And it just really, like, I still have prints of his stuff on my wall now in my bedroom. I mean, between Greg Irons and growing up reading comics and getting the tattooing, I was like, all right, this is where it all houses. It houses under this. Right. And so as I was like learning the tattoo and getting really good, because it matters who you learn from. If you learn from someone who's kind of like, okay, you're only going to be okay. So, you know, if you're the best tattoo artist in the shop, you need to find another shop. And that was kind of, I had a very astringent apprenticeship. It was a 3-year process, 3,000 hours. I lived with my mentor. I cleaned the shop. I learned everything. I made needles, you know, tattoo machines. We fixed things. Like there was no supply companies. There were like 2, and you would buy everything from there. And it was a real like counterculture, but within it was a lot of really talented guys, like lowbrow painters. Everybody was inspired by Geiger and Robert Williams. Like they loved all that stuff, you know what I mean? And so it was just this culture that I was like, I can prosper here because I like all this stuff too.
Wow. That's fantastic, man. And so kind of like, what happened first? Did the comics come before the tattooing? Were you kind of like doing a lot of sketch work and doing freelance? And then like, what was the stacking order of how all this stuff came together?
Yeah, it's a stacking order for sure. And there's a lot of bouncing around because I really wanted to be a comic strip artist. Like I grew up on Bloom County and Calvin and Hobbes, and my father was a huge Charlie Brown fan. And I was obsessed with it. And I really felt like these comic strip worlds were like real. I you know, I would wait. I was cutting Calvin and Hobbes out and saving it in a roll, like a rubber band ball.
Oh, wow.
A roll of the strips. That was like a knot of wood. And then all of a sudden, Walden Books is putting out to collect it. And I was like, okay, I can throw these away now. You know what
I mean? You had like a money roll.
I had a money roll with Calvin and Hobbes, dude. And the paper didn't age well, which was disappointing. But by that point, you know, they start putting out to collect it. So I was getting those. But comic strips. And then as I matured and grew older and playing D&D, things got more sophisticated. I was really interested in like Larry Hama's G.I. Joe world and mythology. And I just wanted to mature through cartooning into comics. And then I thought comics were real too. I would read anything. I would read any book I could get. I couldn't get them consecutively. Yeah. You know, I'd have a missing issue here or there because it was newsstand stuff. But it was comics always. And then, you know, you go to school and you draw that stuff. Like in the last show you were on, they don't really support the cartoonists. You know what I mean? They're always trying to get you to do something else. Yeah. I just, you know, I never gave it up. I was like, nah, this is the thing I'm into, you know, and I think I went to like a Philly Comic-Con when I was 16 in like the early 90s, and it was just like soaking it all in. Everybody was there, and the biggest celebrity guest is Lou Ferrigno. You know what I mean? Like I'm there to meet like artists and stuff. But in high school, I had this classmate whose brother went to Joe Kuber, and that spun it a little bit for me on, okay, you might actually be able to tactfully go about this. My dad was a Marine, so he was a very like, if you're going to do it, just be the best you can be at it type of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's when like I got real serious about the comics, and but I was still very amateur. I needed a lot of schooling and stuff like that, and I would take portfolio reviews, and they would trash my stuff, and I took it really well because I had a father in the military who could give constructive criticism. So I was already prepped for it. Like I wasn't like destroyed by it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would go home, and they were like, draw better hands. I'd go home and get George Brisman's How to Draw Hands and like just study it all summer. Like that's what I did all summer, until I figured it out.
So it's interesting to hear your kind of like beginning in strips where, a lot of times when we talk about our origin stories and things like that, people are always trying to look for this line between what you liked or what you really adored at a certain point, and they're looking for it in your work. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't really see Calvin and Hobbes in Living Corpse and things like that. But so did something kind of take over your creative interest as you went on, or did you, always have a callback?
It was a huge turning point for me. I tried to go to art school. I was, got in by the skin of my teeth at Maryland Institute or Maryland College of Art and Design or community stuff. And I just was unsettled. It wasn't what I wanted. And I was really enamored with like the worlds of like, George Lucas and all that type of stuff. And I was like, I want to make something. I want to make these things, and I would finish a semester and then I'd drop out, and I'd be like, it's got to be something else. And then I was in school for fine art, doing a lot of abstract stuff, like live model stuff. And I was having fun with it, but I was still felt like a black sheep. You know what I mean? But I was a huge fan of horror movies and Fangoria. And I had seen in the back of a Fangoria that they had a school for makeup effects. And I begged my parents to drive me to Florida to like talk to these people. And I went and I got in to a makeup effects school. And that's what really started linking everything together for me when it came to creation, design, storytelling, and monster movies, And so I went to the school in Orlando called the Joe Blasco School for Professional Theater Makeup. And it was associated with Universal Studios. Wow. And so I had taken a year. It was a year-long thing, and my parents were like, "If you can't do it in a year, you can't do anything." Like I did it. It was like 9 months, and then I took like an advanced course, which was another 2 months or 3 for full bodysuit like characters. Yeah. And a lot of the students that went to this school had went to work on Sequest, the TV show, and various other stuff. And so Florida was sort of like this breeding ground for people that were eventually going to go to either Canada or LA. And go make these movies and stuff or do whatever. And so I networked. I went to the school, I graduated, and then I networked and got a job at Universal working on the Monster show and the Beetlejuice show, like doing makeup and stuff. And it was interesting was I picked up drawing three-dimensionally better from sculpting makeups, doing that stuff. And I studied under this guy named Jordi Ushel, who was a sculptor for a lot of the stuff on Men in Black and Hellboy. And stuff like that. He's a phenomenal sculptor. And I got to the degree, and I went to Universal, worked over there for a little bit, but it was like a seasonal gig. And so when that was done, I had seen an ad for a big makeup convention out in California. And I went and I took my portfolio, and I kind of did the thing that I, probably shouldn't have done, but it worked was, I knew the makeup artist on the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I loved all the vampires and the character design. Yeah. So I had sort of stalked this group of people that were in what is called Optic Nerve Studios, which were all guys that learned under Tom Savini.
So I was waiting for Savini to come up. Yeah,
I know, it's funny, right? So when I came back from makeup school, AOL Instant Messenger had been developed, and I had like found Tom Savini on there, and he had been like a pen pal with me on there for a while, kind of coaching me on how to go about it. You know what I mean? Being honest with me, being like, it's very difficult to do it here. You're gonna have to go to Canada or LA. And I went to both, and I found success at both. I got in with the Optic Nerve guys, and they were kind of grooming me to come in and be their plaster monkey, clean all their stuff up. But that's where you start, and you get in with these guys, and they saw my work, and they were kind of like, it's good, but it's not that good. And out in Hollywood, like, they only want the best, and even the best is not good enough often. So they were like, where you went to school is kind of looked at as a joke out here. And they were like, you're going to need to talk to Dick Smith, who is the makeup effects artist for Exorcist, The Hunger, and many other things. He's revolutionized it. He coached Rick Baker and Savini.
Yeah.
And so Dick was in Connecticut, and I wrote him a letter, and he got back to me, and he took me on a consignment course, and like basically was making my stuff more professional and dialing up like the skill sets. And he looked at my concept design, and he was like, man, you don't even really have to do makeup. He's like, you draw well enough that you could just design this stuff. They look for guys like you. And I was already a fan of Kerry Gammo, and Kerry was working with Steve Johnson doing designs for Steve Johnson Effects. And so I knew there was this rollover between like illustrators and monsters. And I was just trying to find a place in all of that. And I was able to, yeah.
Well, the chat is stone quiet. They're just like.
The thing is, like, I was kind of an ADD kid where I always just wanted to learn something else. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I figured it would. I went to a convention and saw some dude dressed up as Death's Head, the character.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like, what if you could, make your character and make the mask, like, do the whole thing? I didn't want to rely on waiting for someone else to do it for me. I wanted to try to figure out a way to do it on my own.
Mike, what are you going to say?
I was saying, how long were you in California then?
Not long, because I had gotten the opportunity to learn how to tattoo. And so I had felt that after my experience in Hollywood, you could be great and get the gig and get right in, no problem. And you will probably work for no credit to little to nothing. And I was balancing that with tattoo and the culture of tattooing. And I was looking at both, like, I want to do both, but I kind of need to pick one and get serious. Like, I think I was 20 years old, 21. And tattooing felt like whatever I did for a person, I was going to get more value out of. They were going to be more appreciative of the work. And in the movie biz, it was kind of like it was easily replaceable.
Right.
And I figured, I still love this stuff. It's not out of my life, but maybe I'll revisit it another time. And I was able to later, obviously. But
did you do any tattooing in LA?
I didn't. I tattooed in Jersey is where I learned. And, mostly East Coast. Like, I tattooed in Philly for a while, Delaware. I did a lot of conventions with my mentor. I was traveling with him as an apprentice. So I was like, I had a red carpet experience right into tattooing, like the best of the best of the best. And the first thing I learned was humility. Like, immediately, like, don't talk about your work. Don't tell anybody who you are. Just listen. And so I spent a lot of time those first 2-3 years watching. My mentor was very well known and had a reputation for helping younger artists get started. So a lot of the younger artists who became to be these famous tattooers who were tattooing like guys in bands like Slayer and White Zombie and Pantera, like that was the celebrity ring of tattooing. Paul Booth is an artist from New York, Guy Aitchison from Chicago. My mentor was close with these guys. And so my first portfolio reviews in tattooing were with like the guys who were at the top of the game right away.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Buzz. Go ahead.
What's ironic was after the portfolio review, they didn't really say anything. And I was kind of like, well, that's a bad thing. And then they looked at me and they were like, what do you do besides tattooing? And I said, well, a creature effects kind of guy and like comics. I want to do comics. And they were like, never stop doing that. And I was like, are you telling me to never stop because I'm not going to make it at tattooing? And they were like, no, all that stuff is going to influence how you tattoo your tattoo designs. And it'll be an inspirational thing where you'll be different than the next guy because you're bringing those elements in. And I stuck with it. And I did a lot of like comic designs and monster designs. And many, many tattooers were like, no one's ever going to get that stuff, man. And I was like, okay. And I just draw it and hang it on the wall, and eventually it caught on. And now there's an entire culture built around it.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm blown away by your lore already. This is really cool. I was going to ask you kind of like a surface to tool question. What were some of the differences between like doing makeup art? I mean, like makeup, doing makeup or sculpting or tattooing, because all of those are different kind of like threshold to surface differences. Like, did you want to keep? Did you connect with one more than the other, or they're all kind of the same to you?
They're all similar but different. In tattooing, it's like engraving, carving, and drawing all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think like that. So you're gripping like a surface that's like rounded and concave or like oblong shape, and it's never flat unless it's a back, and they're not even that flat, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But working on people's faces in the makeup trailer, I did go to Canada and I worked up there for 3 months on a bunch of stuff in Montreal. Some of All Fears I worked on. We were like making like dead bodies and stuff from the nuke blast, and so being in the trailer at 3 o'clock in the morning on a movie set, you've got no sleep. You're up all night casting everything in urethane and airbrushing stuff, and then you're in there and you're like, you know, in someone's eye, you know, right on their eyelash, like trying to do the makeup and the seams. And so being gentle and having good bedside manner, that translated immediately to tattooing. And I think that's why a lot of people come back to me as a tattooer. It's because I have that element in my room. You know, they see a lot of the monsters in the comics and they're like, can you even do a butterfly tattoo? You know, I can, but it's like, you know, just the friendliness, the comfortability, like that was in makeup. It has to be in makeup or they kick you out.
Right.
Yeah, I can do a butterfly, but I got to press really hard.
Right. They call it biker grip when you grab someone's arm from underneath and just squeeze it.
Was any of the was the permanence of tattooing ever intimidating?
100%. I used to throw up before every tattoo. It was insane. Like for the first year, I was so nervous and didn't want anyone to know I was nervous. But you find out later that like most clients don't know. Well, now they do. But back in like the early 2000s, they didn't have a clue what was going on. So you could have messed the whole thing up and they would have not figured it out till someone told them it was bad later.
Right.
But yeah, I used to get sick, and then eventually you just kind of get over it by the 7th or 12th tattoo, and you ink it just like you ink a comic page. You land the needle into the skin, you ride it, and come out just like that. And so, again, to Greg Irons and all that brush work, you know, and studying that stuff and doing it myself, practicing over and over. You know, you're tattooing. It's like just you know. And the thing is, a lot of new kids these days that are learning to tattoo aren't getting the good tutelage, so they're kind of teaching themselves. And the thing they forget is to dip the needle into the ink more often, because they'll run the whole thing like it's Bill Cosby's pen
running it dry. Right. Yeah.
So you have to go back every 2 inches, you know, and to make the lines like black.
This is thrilling.
You said you were going to, if I can, you said you were going to keep you were encouraged to keep cartooning while you're doing all this. Did you ever put a comic together or an indie comic?
Yeah. That's what The Living Corpse was I had eventually met my co-creator, Ken Hazer, who was a graduate of the Kubert School, who already was doing his own comic. And we had a mutual friend and we all hung out one night, and then me and Ken just hit it off like brothers. And I was just talking to him today, getting his blessing for coming on here tonight. And I tattooed him and I started hanging out with him. He had a book called Eyes of Asia from digitalwebbing.com. I don't know if you guys remember that site. Me and Ken met, and then he was on digital webbing, then I jumped on digital webbing, and we were all hanging out with Ed Dukeshire. And so many talents today came from digital webbing. And we were like this first wave of guys that were like attacking the internet for comics. And I would tattoo all day and make money and then run home, get online to digital webbing and talk to Jamal and Mike and Bowden and all these guys and make friends with them and post drawings and sketches and like study their stuff and follow their progresses. And Ken had a 4-issue miniseries that he needed help finishing inking. And I obviously as a tattooer, so I was like, oh, I'd love to help out, you know? Yeah. And I finished some stuff. He printed it. And when we were done, I was like, what's next? You know? And he was like, I don't really have anything. I'm going to take a break from a 4-issue miniseries that I wrote, drew, inked, and, you know, lettered and printed myself, or through digital webbing rather. And so we jumped into The Living Corpse. We came up with this idea. The Walking Dead was hot at the time. No TV show, just the comic. And we always loved zombies. We loved Eric Powell's work on The Goon. We were like huge nerds for Resident Evil, the game, Dead World. I think it's from Stuart Carr and Vince Locke. We love these indie, gritty, grimy, like back of the back issue bin, stanky book zombie thing, you know, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something like that. And we wanted to kind of push the envelope where we weren't just doing like this Romero thing that was coming through The Walking Dead, you know. And so we put this idea together called The Corpse. It was going to be like told from the perspective of the zombie, his experience in the narrative, not survival, not fighting amongst your friends for food, just the zombie and what it was like. It was supposed to be just a one shot. We were going to do it for fun because I think Ken was pretty exhausted from the miniseries, but I hadn't made a comic yet and I was ready to go. I was bursting at the seams to put something together. I had this idea in my head. I'd always loved Tales from the Crypt and the comic and the show. And I'd had this idea of something called Graveyard Chronicles, where like each grave is like a story and it would be more like a Tales from the Dark Side kind of thing. And then hanging out with Ken was like osmosis, just learning how to build character, plot, do layouts. I think he was working at AT&T at the time, and every day he'd get off of work and scan me like 4 pages of thumbnails from the back of a work form, and then I'd blow them up and pencil over the whole thing till 2 a.m. at the tattoo shop. And at the end of the week, he'd come and collect 5 pages, and then he'd take them home and ink them. And we would do that over and over and over for as long as you've known us. That's how we did it. It was a very how to draw comics the Marvel way kind of thing.
You were making your living as a tattoo artist at that time, right? Absolutely,
yeah, and that funded it all as well. Which tattooing was very lucrative at that time, and I was printing T-shirts and hoodies and paying for convention tables, and we were printing at Kinko's, printing ash cans. I tattooed a girl at the Kinko's and was printing ash cans with her, and then we found Kablam online. And I think we learned that was who Ed was using at Digital Webbing. And we pitched Ed the Corpse first, and he was interested, but he was like, I don't know. And that's the thing is like, we pitched that book to everybody, and they were like, hey, we hear you got a zombie book. And they were ready to cash in on that Walking Dead thing. But I had always been taught, I would get portfolio reviews. I've seen Mike back in the day and Simonson and all these guys, and they're like, be original, don't steal. Draw your own stuff, practice, have fun, So we were like, cool, let's do something different then, that's our signature to us. We were big fans of The Tick, and Hellboy. And so we wanted to kind of put these silly worlds together with monsters and stuff. And we didn't want any human characters, Like we just wanted like monster characters. And we would pitch this stuff and people would just look at us like, very sad. Like it was not Walking Dead. It was not a rip off of Walking Dead. Why would they come in and copy the hottest book? What are you talking about? Right. But then I realized later that's what they're looking for, So we just took it ourselves. We pitched it to Ed. He wasn't sure. And we printed it ourselves. We put 500 copies in my trunk. We hit every comic shop from New York to DC. And we hung out with people and we did free sketches and we met with people. And I'll be honest, I think like being like these black T-shirt tattooed guys, people were like a little more, they were like kind of intimidated, but a little more interested in who we might be and not so stuffy like as a creator.
So you have a trunk full of comics. You go to a comic shop that you may or may not have ever been in before?
Oh, I would contact them ahead of time. We were using MySpace as the character. We jumped on there and made the Living Corpse a person. And so we were talking to people like we were him. And even before that, we were in chat rooms, like unsolicitedly dropping pages into like zombie chat rooms. Be like, check out our book. We had no idea that it was like kind of like a faux pas to do that. We were just trying to get readers. And it wasn't even about money. It was about like, check out our thing. Check out this theory page.
That's very guerrilla. Yeah, that's how we used to do it.
Yeah, we treated it like an indie rock band, and we pushed it like that. And we even had like indie rock bands or indie metal bands we knew making songs for the character, and we would get together with these comic shops, and they would be like, oh yeah, sure, come by, and we would just hang out, and we were really cool. We built relationships with them. Bunch of shops, Staten Island, Baltimore, Philly, like all over, a lot in Jersey. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. And then I think we went from that, we went to Pittsburgh Comic-Con. It was like the first one we did, and I was like, all right, like this is where we belong.
That's a good place for Living Corpse, for sure.
And we started there, and nobody knew who we were. They could give a shit about who we were. And we put a sign on the table that said free sketch. And somebody gave me, like, one guy gave me a really hard time about it. And I was like, nobody knows who I am, man. But they're all walking by me.
Right.
You got to do something to get them to come over and at least look at it.
So was he upset? He thought you were going to take business away?
He was like, why are you doing it for free when we're trying to charge over here? And he had a great point. I totally get it. But like, I'm invested at this point. Right. I'm dumping tons of money into it.
Thanks, Neil Adams.
Yeah, right.
It's funny.
It wasn't Neil, but I mean, yeah, kind of like that. And you know what? I tried to talk to the guy, and I was like, "Look, man, I'm really sorry, blah blah blah." But I had to do something, and it drew people over. And ironically, there was a line in front of us for Sal Buscema, and people saw the free sketch, and were like, "While I'm waiting, hold my spot. I'm gonna go check this out." And it was really just meeting people. Some people were into it, some people weren't, and we kind of had this thing. I don't want to take any credit for it, but Ken had this idea to make the cover blank, and I was like, what for? And he was like, we're going to do a sketch on it for people when they buy it. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I was like, what if we did like the border, like blue line? And we did that. And then we had seen Billy Tucci do it for a She-Ash can in like the mid 90s, but it was like a smaller version. And I hadn't really seen that around at the time. And so we did it. And that's what sold the books. We sold 500 of them because people were like, what is the drawing thing? I'm like, oh, when you buy the book, we draw the character on it. And it was just this little Stan Sakai quick zombie head thing. You've seen me do it or post it 100 times.
Yeah.
And that's what moved it. And then ironically, 4 years later, a bunch of things happened to accelerate us. Ken ended up working for Dynamic Forces and Dynamite Entertainment. And that's what he does for a living, is basically the sketch covers. And they were the guys to get in. They saw our stuff and were like, oh, we're gonna do this too. And they started printing blanks for everything they get their hands on.
Sure.
Blanks are everywhere now.
Oh, it's a whole industry.
That's crazy.
It's funny. Funny story was, we were at Baltimore one year moving them, and I always kind of paid attention to who everybody was, and I had seen that guy Brian Polito, I think is how you say his last name, Chaos Comics guy. He came over to the table, and I knew who he was. And I was drawing one. He was like, what are you doing there? And I'm like, oh, it's like do the sketch on the cover when you buy the book. He's like, oh, it's really cool. I'm like, here, let me just give you one. I'm a fan of Evil Ernie and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm good. Keep it, sell it. And I was like, all right. A year later, someone gave me a collection of Spider-Man sketch covers. And in the inside credits, it was like, Joe Quesada wants to thank Brian Polito for the idea to do the Spider-Man sketch cover project. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, get out of here, dude. And I go to Ken and I tell him about it. And he's like, what are you going to do? You go back to work. We're like, whatever. But that really happened. It's in print. You know what I mean? But it's just ironic. But we had a lot of fun.
That's so comics.
It's so comics, dude.
That's so comics.
It's 100% comics. Yeah.
That's what we have an old
At least it was somebody that was like, oh yeah, that guy's done some cool stuff. You know what I mean?
That's what there's a phrase that we say around here. Yay comics.
Yay comics, exactly, man.
Do you still do conventions?
Yeah.
I do a horror con called Monster Mania. And the reason why I do it, the reason why I do it is because it's a great mix, man. And horror fans support anything and everything. Comic fans have walked past my table for 18 years and not looked at it. I'm in the same spot at Baltimore. We've seen each other there 100 times. And they just won't look at the book. They're familiar with the graphics, the banner, everything. They won't touch it. I'll give you the book if you don't have the money, So I was just like, the horror con thing, anybody would check the book out. Anybody, from 13 and up. Some people were like, oh, I've got every one of these. What's new? I'm like, I don't have anything new yet. And they're like, well, let me get another round of them. You know what I mean? Like horror fans, they'll just dive in, man. And so I've been doing Monster Mania. It's in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's in Baltimore. It's in Oaks, PA, like 4 times a year. And that's enough for me. That and free comic book day. I've got three teenagers and a farm. So keep my toe in the horror thing a little bit.
There's something to be said, even just through your lore line, is that you kind of have to go to where people want you. You know what I mean? I know there's a kind of like, you might spin your wheels for 5 years just thinking that because there's a show in town, you're supposed to be there because it says comics outside.
Right.
But you're proof positive. It's like, well, these people over here are feeling this, so let's just give them what they want over there.
Yeah. We did 10 cons a year for 10 straight years promoting The Living Corpse. And we dumped.
I saw you at all.
Yeah, we were always there. But we dumped so much money into it, and we made money up until about 2012. Yeah. And then it became like break even kind of, and it's like, all right, well, how long do you want to break even? And so when I found we were already doing Monster Mania at that point, and so we had such a great relationship with those guys. They're the guys that throw that show. Their kids hang out with my kids. It just became so cool. And it's like the celebrities are cool. It's a personal environment. It's not like the fan expos where it's like 2 seconds you're up and out. They actually, you can get time with a celebrity to discuss things. I met Henry Winkler. I've met so many people, and you get your good 4 minutes, and 3-4 minutes will feel like 15, you know?
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that. I didn't enjoy the hustle and bustle of the big con, like give us all your money and here's your hard to stand on surface for 3 days and for chicken tenders and hot dogs only. So, you know, we boiled it down to this Monster Mania thing is just too cool. Like there's too many cool people here. They'll all support it. And so it just became that. And then, you know, I did a con in Jersey recently with the podcast, which was super fun. But like, you know, I'll probably stop by Baltimore for the day, but I probably won't work it, you know?
Do you cross pollinate your comic work at the tattoo shop?
All the time. I have tattooed the living corpse on probably 25 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're still asking for it. It's weird, man, but I love it. And it's really cool. I tattooed it on Ken. They made this kid named Jim Canatelli, who was a filmmaker at the Wilmington University near us. He had seen the movie in Redbox, and that's a whole nother conversation, the movie thing.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Shirt, and he's working at Walgreens, and I had this living corpse shirt on. And he's like, looking at the shirt, he's like, the movie's up. And he was like this little filmmaker, so he would follow us around to all the conventions and film stuff. Wow. And us drawing and everything. And I was like, we need to do this on film because it's probably not going to last forever. It's going to break up at some point. And I'm glad we did it. So there was like a documentary that came out. I think we even put it on VHS to be nerdy. I still got like 25 copies of it.
Do you think that people, I mean, I've always felt that one of the things that's odd about fandom is people will be very, very rabid, you know, fanatics, literally, about stuff. But it's in a very specific lane, and you can't take somebody who might like, let's say, Star Trek and make them like something else. Or you can't make somebody who likes the X-Men like Swamp Thing.
Right.
It used to seem like people had a broader sense of taste, maybe because, you know, we're older now, so you never knew what you were going to get. Like you said, when you went to the 7-Eleven, you might get a Sergeant Rock, you might get a Cartoons magazine, you might get a Mad, whatever was there, that's what you picked up. So you generally got a much wider range. But, you know, when you go to a Comic-Con, it's like people who want George Perez are going to go beeline right for George Perez. They're not going to go to other stuff. And you could give it to them. They're like, yeah, that's nice, but.
Yeah, you're right. It's like there's so much stuff. They kind of have to tunnel down on what they really like. And I saw that live in person when we did Baltimore in 2019. We had put out a one shot of the living corpse, and I had become friends with David Michelinie. And I wanted to bring him into what we were doing. I was like, it's obvious I'm never going to work for Marvel. I was like, let me just go get the guy who I read all his stuff and bring him to us. And I'm a big comic collector. I have a pretty vast collection, a lot of graded stuff, raw stuff. I'm a fan. And so I met these guys that knew him, and they kind of pulled him out of the woodwork when the Venom movie came around. And he did a signing at Blue Hen. And Joe had asked me if I would come hang out and draw like the line wrapped around the building for him. And I was like, absolutely. I'm a huge fan. I have a Venom tattoo. I was like, I'll be there. I went right in, beeline to him, shook his hand, like making eye contact. I'm like, dude, I love everything you do. I met him like years before, but it was quick. And he remembered me, and like, you know, it warmed my heart. And he's a really great guy. And he's become a family friend now after working with him. But I was like, is there any way we could hire you to write like an issue for us? Because after 15 years of doing the book, we're like, we need something new that's going to keep us excited. And he was like, sure, you know, and he charged us like half his rate because it was indie. And he went to town, and he wrote this book for us called The Living Corpse Hex Files, where he brought in this sort of like gray ghost character from the Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. Where it was like a ghost detective. He was etheric, and like he's crossing over with Living Corpse and stuff. Really cool issue. And we were going to Baltimore to like push it. And I asked David, I was like, dude, what are the chances you'll come to the convention with us? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I just couldn't believe it. So we promoted it. And then the Baltimore guys were like, hey, we saw you're bringing Michelinie to the show. And I was like, yeah. And so when we had him, I'd never seen a line like that, man. I never seen anything in my life. Like I was like, I'm not drawing anything. I'm just going to hang out and watch David. And I'm listening to like, you know, the fans talk about referencing what Mike said about liking one thing. The line of people coming out for him, it was out of control. The amount of stuff. The 40 years of writing comics, just the amount of stuff. And then he would look at every cover and like talk about, you know, his experience with it. But seeing that line be dedicated to him, like within the first 10 minutes of the show, I was like, wow, you know, like it was crazy to see that level of fandom, just like militant about getting his signature and meeting him. And
That's beautiful.
I love it. There's a couple questions, Buzz, I want to start to trim off before we get too deep into the show. There's a lot of tattoo questions.
all right.
And then there's some questions about how to get some of your product. So let's do this first one from our buddy Paul Pate. What up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate says, is there a progression from small tats to larger ones? Like how big after 1 year, 5 years? Is there a scaling in learning tattoo apprenticing?
Sure. My apprentice is in the chat actually, but I always tell him all the time, don't draw anything bigger than the palm of your hand. Because if it looks like crap, you can cover it up with a bigger piece later. So when you're starting, you know, on year 1 and 2, you keep them in business card size to palm size, and you get good at that because you can control that. If you have a big piece like this, you get overwhelmed. You're halfway in, you're sweating. It's taken 3 times as long as it normally would, and you never get to the top of it. So just right here in the space, arms and legs are easier. You know what I mean? They're flatter surfaces. Wouldn't recommend starting on a rib or a stomach or a chest. It's like a weird angle. So yeah, you start small. Line work first. You got to have the crispy, clean line work, or it's garbage. And then you learn the shading and the value system of that and how that works with the inks. And then you move into color saturation. You know, and color saturating is like weaving color together, like the way you make a bare raw Prismacolor solid on tracing paper by scrubbing. Yeah. So you kind of do the interlocking circle in the tattooing back and forth. But remember the dip. You always have to go back and get more pigment because you can't do it as it runs out into the skin, goes into the skin, then you're out of it. So you're always dipping and coming in this way and that way to make things solid. But yeah, but by the 3rd year, you've got it. By the 5th year, you think you're the shit. And by the 10th year, you have burnout. And then by the 15th year, you get reinvigorated. And then the 20th year, you're teaching somebody.
Wow. Thanks, Paul Pate. It's great that I think Steve's going to be an apprentice. He's rapt attention. Right?
Is there so you had to do 3, you said 3 years of apprenticeship? Is that still the case? Is that industry standard?
Yeah, it should be. Unfortunately, they sell the equipment on Amazon now, so everybody's buying it. And it's they went from these like fire department doorbells, like you take the bell off a fire department, the cap off of it, there's 2 coils in it, and that was what the tattoo machine was made out of. Wow. The coils were mounted, a magnet was applied. 1895, they figured it out. And then now you can buy them in these pens that just come from China, and you can like click the needle in and just go. It has no cord, the battery's in it, like a vape battery type thing, and you can just tattoo all over. But there is a technique that you want to watch somebody do. So to pick it up, it's kind of tough, you know, on your own.
Wow.
Did that answer your question? I'm sorry. I might have.
No, that was fantastic.
What was your first tattoo?
Ironically, it was a Greg Irons dragon and sword, and I was very proud of that. And I shaded it wrong. And my mentor came over and was like, the dark color goes underneath, the light color goes on top.
Right.
I was like, all right, cool. You know, it was like greens, like 3 green values. So it's something I probably could have went in later and fixed, but they were gone. It was the first time I made money off of too.
How often do you run into old clients, or do they kind of find you after a while? Like, look, bro, it's still holding up.
Yeah, they hit me up. I see them at Walmart, the mall, like at a concert. Like, I can't go anywhere without running into someone that I tattooed. And that's a cool thing, you know, like you become part of the lore. I always wanted to make art that just outlived me. It didn't matter to me if it was a sailboat or a back piece. I'd like to be as original as I can. It's hard to do these days with so much out there, but yeah, I run into old clients all the time. Now I'm doing like 2nd and 3rd layers on stuff that's 15 years old. The thing about tattooing is no matter how good you are at it or well known you are, they all do break up and fade over time. And it's just the nature of the skin. It's porous, it's flexing, muscle gain, weight loss. And so things change and the work changes with it. The sun is a natural enemy to the tattoo. So you want things to be bold, clean, not too complicated, easily read. You know what I mean? And they usually hold up good. My work was always bold and large. And if you were like, I want a tattoo on my arm, I'd be like, okay. And I would do your whole arm with the tattoo, because I was like, that's going to live longer than like this little guy. Like right now it's crazy popular to be covered in little ones. And what happens is over time, the ink spreads, and anything where the two lines are closer together than the width of a match, they're going to bleed together eventually, like a marker on a napkin. Like I said, I don't care how good you are at it or how popular you are at it. That's what happens to all of them. So you have to think about that design-wise when you're doing anything. A lot of comic guys will come to me when they find out I tattoo and they want their like stuff tattooed on them, and I have to go over that with them. Right. You know, they'll bring me a Jim Lee page and want Psylocke from Jim Lee, and I'm like, there's too many lines in it. Right. We gotta do more of like an Alex Ross version of this, you know, or something like a Bruce Timm where it's simpler. You know what I mean? Right. Because they age well, you know, whereas like the constant cross hatching just doesn't.
Scott Williams is gonna fall apart. Right.
Yeah, and I love Scott's work.
All right, there's another tat question. Our new friend Art by Anna asks, when you first started tattooing, was there anything you think was harder to tattoo than to draw?
Probably realism, you know, because on a paper, realism, you can kind of like, you know what you're going to get when you put the mark on the paper, if it's a light wash or if it's like a hard shadow. And the skin, it has to heal. And so when it heals, it changes. And so when you see it healed, you're like, oh, that's like, I always err to the light side, and I can always darken it later. If it's dark, I can't lighten it. So yeah, seeing realism shift as it heals. If you do like a portrait of Elvis and you've got all the cool, greasy forms of his face, and you're doing them in like gray wash, they may lighten up and heal, and then you lose that whole shadow. And so you have to do high contrast a lot to like get that look. So I think portraiture is, a lot of people do portraiture because there's all kinds of tutorials for it now. But I think the transition from doing it on like a watercolor to going to the flesh, like you've always got to be aware that when it heals, it might not look exactly like the day you did it. You might have to go in and like tighten some stuff up.
And don't people use like stencils now? Like you have a really complicated thing, you'll transfer it on.
The stencils, they've always been a part of the process. They used to be acetate that they would take a razor blade and cut the design in and then shake charcoal powder on it. This is in the 40s and 50s. And they would put the soap on you and then lay the acetate over, and the charcoal would leave the stencil. And that's how they would trace those hula girls and stuff. And then they eventually got a hold of those thermofaxes from high schools for dittos.
Oh, like
and we're still using those to this day. They're a little more upgraded, but like, it's that purple paper that comes out. You shave the skin, you hit it with alcohol to sterilize it. You put the gel on, and then the paper is like real form. You can form it now. You can cut it and form it to the shape of the area. But everything is traced, copied, and then burned through a thermofax to make the transfer. And then the transfer is how you get, like, if it's a portrait, I'll like stipple where the shadows are and stuff in like a pattern. And then I have the reference next to me, and I put the stencil on, and then I just like shade it as I look at the reference and kind of recreate it.
I was going to ask you a question, but it can wait. I want to get to some more.
Do you deal with like different skin? Like people have thin skin, thick skin, you know?
Yeah. It's a lot of different stuff. It's like you've got like old guys that work outside, so their skin's like turtley, like turtle texture. And then you've got people who are like so fair that, you know, white, the ink color white shows up on them bright as day.
Wow.
And so you have, you'll dictate that as you have experience over and over again with a client, or, you know, different pigmentations and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about pigmentation in makeup school too. So going into tattooing and understanding the value of like someone who's Latino or from, you know, another country or something like that. And, you know, on darker complexions, you want to go bigger. On lighter complexions, you know, there's more options. It's all different. You just try to make the best piece you can for the area. Some people have blemishes. There's like scarring or something like that you have to work around. And
are there a lot of tattoo artists who kind of, I kind of come from a couple of worlds like you, Buzz. Like I kind of come from graffiti world too, where there's kind of like rules of engagement. Like you don't go over other people's pieces, you know, that kind of stuff. Are there any kind of tattoo rules like that? Like, unless somebody's hiring you for a cover up, like
there are. There's a lot. people will come to me and be like, oh, I want to get rid of this. And I'm like, who did it? And they're like, oh, I'd rather not say. I'm like, I need to know, because if it's my friend, I'm not going over it.
See, I love it.
So we do that, like if I have to work next to my buddy's stuff all the time. There's collectors that go around and they'll give me like this space to like wedge in, like, a half face of something. And you're like going up to the next piece and you're like, do I touch it? Do I connect it? Right. Sometimes I'll talk to these guys. I'm like, hey man, I'm working next to this. What do you think? Most guys are like, do whatever you want. You know what I mean? I love you, man. Do whatever you want. And other guys panic, like, right. Don't get too close to my thing,
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of rules in tattooing that, have been thrown out the window these days by a lot of new people, but the rules are in place for a reason, and because it helps the longevity of your career. The rules are sort of created by the guys that were in the 70s. I learned from older guys in the 70s, 80s. And there are these rules, and I still hold them up. I'm teaching them to my apprentice now. And I think they matter, and I think they help you last long in the business, rather than just going for like what you want to get out of it,
I guess it's like rules for outsider art, because that's sort of like Juxtaposed magazine. I mean, tattooing was, it became mainstream.
Yeah.
I mean, like everybody goes, I want to be unique. And then they all go get the same tattoo, where some Asian symbol that they don't even know what the hell it means, but they think it's going to be,
I remember picking up Juxtaposition and noticing when lowbrow tattoo art started making its way into the magazine. And what had happened was tattoo convention started in the 70s with Ed Hardy. Ed Hardy was the first guy in tattooing to be considered a tattoo artist. Before that, it was a dermographic practitioner or tattooer or electric modern tattooing. But Hardy went to art school. He went to the Art Institute in San Francisco and got into tattooing kind of like after the fact, and was doing the dragons and things like that. Most people know him now from the clothes, but he was the first guy to come in and paint, like in the tattoo booth. And it was a biker thing. It was a gang thing. It was an old sailor thing. It was a beatnik punk rock thing. And all these weird lifestyles were into it. It's what I love, the multiculturalism of it all. It's why I got into it. The last thing I wanted to do was wear a tie and be in an office. I just wanted to hang out with crazy people. And when Hardy brought the art in and it became a tattoo art, that's when it expanded. The conventions expanded. My mentor was at every convention. He was friends with Hardy. And like I said, when I got in the 90s, you started seeing like the bands come in and get tattooed. And all of a sudden they started bringing camera crews in, like Discovery Channel wanted to see what we were up to. And everyone was like, they're gonna chew us up and spit us out now. They're gonna like invade our culture. And some guys were all about it. Like, I'll talk to you. I'll show you everything, And so that's how the shows came. The shows came out of like 10 years of tattoo conventions all over the country, and seeing slowly but surely, like, models coming in and celebrities coming in and the camera crews coming in. And next thing you know, everyone was like, how do I get my stuff more known, more seen? And that's when we always wanted it to be from counterculture, not necessarily mainstream. We wanted to be taken seriously as artists. We didn't want to be like considered criminal, and it is a criminal element. It completely started. Black and gray tattoos started in jail. They did not start in a tattoo shop. They didn't think that the black and gray wash would last, so everyone was doing everything in color. And then the gang guys got out, opened up shops in SoCal, and were doing all black and gray Chicano stuff, and it took over, And so, but we wanted it to be taken seriously as an art form, and then that's what invited in all this like gallery presentation and crossover into magazines. And I'm an artist also, and I paint. I don't just tattoo. And the camera crews, and then social media. Once that butted in, the cats were completely out of the bag.
This is so wild. I wanted the questions keep stacking up, but our buddy Pulp to Pixels, welcome to Pencil to Pencil, says, are you and kids still doing or planning to doing more living course? What's up with the property?
Well, we did 15 straight years of it, and we do have another story we want to do. I think 2020 kind of killed progression. Like, after working with Michelini, he was like, I don't know how to top that. Like, I don't know how to top that. I just don't. What do? You're not going to resurrect Stan Lee. You know what I mean? And so yeah, we kind of 2020 kind of slowed things down. And when they fired back up, me and Ken had been offered license work. We had done enough Living Corpse that like, and I'll tell you, like I took a portfolio review with Bob Schreck from DC one time, and like maybe 2000. And he said to me, you know, the best business card you can ever give me is your own comic book. And it just shattered me. And I was like, I've been doing the wrong thing. You know, I've been showing samples. What am I doing? And I ran home, met Ken, and we made the Living Corpse. But once we started that, it was like, well, this is all we want to do. We're just want to make it. Right. No one's telling us what to do. Ken was the professional. I was learning everything osmosis, like live, verbatim. And we did as much as we could. And after working with Michelini, things slowed down. We got the license work. We had another story written. We had Michelini write another backup story for us. It all kind of sat with getting paid work, you know. Yeah. We were breaking even. We were breaking even on Corpse. We were running successful Kickstarters, you know, but we would love to. It's just, you know, you got to get paid for what you do. And I'd rather not take a bunch of money up front and then make it. I'd rather like have it come organically. And you know, Ken still wants to do it. We talk every day. He's my best friend. We you know, we have all kinds of plans for it. It just depends on if the time's right. Obviously with the Diamond debacle, it's like slowed things down on indie level. I work with American Mythology Productions, who put out all the horror license stuff I'm working on. And they've been doing some reprints of Corpse, and they would probably put it out for us, no problem. But we got to figure out where the industry lands after all this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that are upside down on the whole thing. So Corpse isn't going anywhere. I actually have a couple of guys that are interested in some live action independent film stuff that has a decent budget to do something. So there may be like a YouTube thing that pops up that I'm not going to tell you about now, but there's always something cooking on it. I wish we could keep doing it, but Ken's really busy at Dynamite on like every cool license there is. You know what I mean? Like from Darkwing Duck to Gargoyles and Thundercats and Garbage Pail Kids, and we did Grumpy Cat with them over there. But yeah, more Corpse in the future, hopefully. You know, we'd love to.
Has the licensed stuff helped bring a crowd at the horror conventions?
Oh yeah, it took off. You know, because Corpse is finite. You know, there's only so much of it, and so the licensed stuff I was doing: Night of the Living Dead, Fright Night, Return of the Living Dead, Willy's Wonderland, Hatchet. I forget what else. My Bloody Valentine, and you know, I was getting in on the ground floor with James Kahurik over that. He runs American Mythology. And we had done some covers for him for Dynamite. He came up in Dynamite. He still works for DF, I think, or Dynamite. But we talk to him every day too, you know, and we're trying to help him keep that company going. A lot of the licenses, you know, were ideas I had. I was like, dude, it'd be great if you could get this, you know, and then we get the license and it's kind of like a headache to deal with, but we do it anyway, you know. So yeah, the horror license stuff flies off the table. You know, it's only covers, you know, the scale wasn't enough for me to jump in on interiors. I would love to. And it was all offered to me, but I just couldn't keep up with it with like the tattooing also. So I'm happy to do the covers and be a part of the horror production stuff.
Buzz, before we go any further, you got to talk about other media.
Oh yeah. So it's really, this is really a weird thing that happened when we were on MySpace promoting as the character and acting like the Living Corpse and talking to people and doing like sketch giveaways and all this stuff. I was invading forums and chat rooms, and I ended up running across a visual effects director named Justin Ritter, who's a good friend of mine, and I didn't know him before I met him, but he's become a good friend of mine. And he used to work for Roger Corman, and I was a big fan of all that old sci-fi horror stuff from the 60s that Corman had done. And we were like, you know, he hit me up and he was like, man, I love this little zombie thing you got. He's like, is there any chance you're making it into like a comic or a movie? And I was like, well, it's a comic in production. The first issue's not even done yet. But like, what is this movie thing you're talking about? And he was a director, and he ended up helping us sell the rights to Morris Ruskin, who was a producer at Shoreline Entertainment. And he was a Oscar award-winning producer on Glengarry Glen Ross. And so I knew right away I was dealing with real people. I was not messing around with some talk. And we fought with them for a while over the contract because I knew about this stuff from being a makeup guy. And Justin was really cool. He negotiated it all really well. Morris was really cool to work with, but it was like we were dealing with a third or fourth generation Hollywood producer. So they were like, you know, they knew exactly what they wanted out of us.
They want you to sign the boilerplate and lose the licensing.
Right. Yeah. Their contract said the word forever.
Right.
I swear it did.
Not even in perpetuity. It's just
It's
forever.
forever, dude.
Forever, ever.
Yeah, or they'll put something in like in all the known universe.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
But so I went back and forth. I was savvy. I had already worked on movie sets. I had already I could hang, Yeah. And but I did not know contracts that well, the legalese. The second movie we did on another property, I was way more savvy on. But we basically were in a race because they were. I didn't know this at the time, but they were going back and forth between The Living Corpse and us, and Ben Templesmith and Wormwood Gentleman Corpse. And I didn't know that at the time. They just said they had another guy they were talking to. I didn't know if he was nobody or somebody, and they were not going to tell me who. And I had a lot of respect for Ben and his work on 30 Days and what he was doing with Wormwood. But they chose us because Image was just too hard to work with. And Image, I think, was putting the book out at the time. Image wanted 6% of royalties, and we took 1%. And I took 1% because I knew that Marvel only got 2% from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. So I was like, there's no way they're ever going to give you 6%. You know what I mean? There's no way. So we can lose the deal or we can take the 1%. And that's what Justin said. He's like, take the 1%, the next deal will be better. If you don't take the 1%, you don't get another deal for 10 more years. And so we took the 1%. And it took me a while to convince Ken. And they tried to get me to cut Ken out. And I was like, you ain't got nothing from me.
That's how they get you.
Yeah.
That's how they get
like,
you.
We really like you, man. We like working with you. And I'm like, that's cool. I can't do the book without him. It's that simple. The answer is no. There's no deal. And I walked. And then 2 days later, they balked. And they were like, all right, fine, we'll do it. And I knew they would do that too.
That's a friendship killer right there.
Dude, I had read so much comic history about that stuff. It was impossible that I would ever let it occur to me and my buddy who did this. It was impossible. And I think that comes from the tattoo thing, the respect in tattooing. I just had it. I have it for you guys. I just had it. I'm not losing it. No fame, no nothing is going to take away the pride and the due diligence of those relationships. They're the foundation, But eventually they balked and worked with us anyway. And the movie was horrible. It was, poor animation. I told them forever, I'm like, please do live action with a guy in a rubber suit because that stuff ages for all time. Right. People are still watching the old Godzillas. You're still watching Ultraman. You're still watching, Andre the Giant as Bigfoot and the Bionic Man or whatever. It's like, it'll last. And they just were like, we're going to animate it. And I'm like, ugh, it's dead. And so Ken was like, let's just focus on the book. So we focused on the book and we helped with the movie a little bit, but it did come out. It did see fruition. It ended up on Blu-ray. It was at Redbox. Mm-hmm. They made their money.
Distribution. Yeah.
Distribution is hard. Making the movie is not as hard, not nearly as hard. So Lionsgate picked it up. Justin had some connections in Germany to the Lionsgate division. They went for it immediately. But we had done this thing where like Justin went to, I think, to Korea to bring animators back to make it better. And then DreamWorks stole them from us. They offered them $1 more. And it was like we lost the whole crew and the animation tanked. And it sucked, man. It broke my homie Justin, and he did everything he could. We did get to go to San Diego for like a premiere, which was our first time there and the last time there. But they went all out, And I was standing in a condo, $1 million condo with the producers, and I look like this, you know what I mean? Like I'm not hanging out with these guys, man. They're like, "What's your attitude about?" I'm like, "I don't have an attitude," and it was like the East Coast thing, like they just couldn't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm standing there with them and I'm doing all the press. I did all the press. I kill everything for him because I've always been the J and Ken's always been the Silent Bob. Mm-hmm. And the producer's like Lex Luthor looking out the window over all of San Diego. And he's like, man, if I would have known you guys were going to drag out all these people to the premiere, I would have put more money into the movie. And I was like, well, hindsight's 2020. And, I tried to tell you what you had.
Right.
But
it's funny because we had Scott Sabo on here last week, and we're talking about the mirage of Hollywood. Yeah. And it's great when people come from comics, and you get into that world, and you kind of see quickly, like, well, maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze all the time.
Yeah.
Some people lose their whole.
Right. I've seen a lot of guys. I mean, I watched. Eric Powell fight for years to get his movie made, and he deserved a movie more than we did. We didn't have a comic book done yet. We were still putting it together. Yeah. But they don't really know what's a hit until it hits. They want to know, They just don't know. And I'll be honest with you too. Everyone investing in the movies has a side hustle. They're not just movie producers. They run real estate. They do this, they do that. So everyone's in there using smoke and mirrors to make it look like something that it isn't. I like that. I went to theater school. You know what I mean? Like, I'm cool with pretending that it's something, you know what I mean? But yeah, they just don't know what's a hit. They never read the book. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know.
Right.
And you hear it all the time. Yeah. But I was like, I'm not missing this shot, because you just never know. And even though it was kind of like, we did a premiere down at Third Eye Comics, everyone's laughing at the movie. We were embarrassed, but the book was strong. Like, the book was still good. You know, it was a very, very cool comic, and people like that. You know, they liked us, and we drew a lot of sketches and stuff. But you know, I wish it would have done a little better. But you know, you get what you get, and you just keep going. You know, we never lost sight of the fact that it was just supposed to be a comic book. It wasn't supposed to be a movie too. That was like something extra that I was like entertaining and pushing, and it worked, and it went through. So it was a good experience. We did do a second movie called Little Dead Riding Hood, which was like a play off of Little Red Riding Hood. And I had pitched this comic idea to Zenescope because they were the first ones to publish The Living Corpse. We had gotten that publishing deal through the movie. Those guys are from Hollywood, so they wanted to do the movie stuff. So they thought they were going to like piggyback us. So they put out 6 issues, and then eventually we broke our contract with them because we just were a bad fit. You know, they're cheesecake art and goofy, cartoony zombie stuff. It just didn't work. And then we got in with Dynamite. They put it out, but yeah, we just stayed true to the comic. You know, when the movie flunked, we were just like, let's go do another book. And we went from a flop movie to a 160-page graphic novel in 3 years.
Wow.
And we rocked it.
And there's someone out there who was given this, was offered the chance to make their movie if they cut out their friend. And then they cut out their friend, and they made that awful,
right.
You know,
I knew I had a good idea it was going to be bad anyway. And I don't care. I like bad movies. You know,
is it fun? Would you recommend we check it out?
Oh no, don't watch it.
Okay, it's not a mystery.
It's not worth it. It's rough. It's like
okay, funny.
What'd you say, Mike?
It's not MS3.
Oh yeah, no. I would love for those guys to do our movie. I would like my movie better if Joel got back up in that seat and did that joint.
And again, that's what you're talking about. It's something that fans have no idea about why things work and don't work, you know, because you may have a guy that's got the checkbook, has no idea. I mean, they're not horror fans. They're not Del Toro, right?
Nope.
Who knows comics? Who knows horror?
Right.
You know, if you're with Sam Raimi, if you're somebody like that, then it may not have the budget that you want, but at least you know the person understands the source material.
Right.
Yeah, it's ironic. Ted Raimi actually contacted us in 2015. He was interested in doing a live action show for it. And then so we were so excited, we just gave him everything we had in the next graphic novel that was about to come out. And in issue 4, Corpse wakes up in an asylum, and it was all a dream. He was never a zombie. He was just insane. And Ted eventually sort of disappeared from our chat. And I was like, I guess he's moved on to something else. And then when Ash vs. Evil Dead came out, season 2, and he was in the show, episode 4, Ash wakes up in an asylum, and it was all a dream. Ash isn't. I swear, dude, I'm on the producer calls me right away and is like, Ted stole the thing or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what to, you brought Ted in.
That's Hollywood.
That's right. Hollywood. And he brought Ted Raimi into the conversation. We were just like, okay, I'm throwing a Hail Mary because I love Evil Dead. And Sam Raimi is like one of my biggest influences. I'm not missing this. Here's everything we have. And then they were like, well, they can only steal what you show them. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know. But like we were stealing from Evil Dead already. So it's like, okay. Yeah. Like the underbite on Living Corpse comes from Evil Ash from Army of Darkness. So is one hand washes the other on it, but it really happened, you know, like you're like, here's our chance. We finally made it into Raimi, and then it still flunks.
Well, there's that stuff in E.T.
Yep.
that came from Dave Stevens.
You told me that at Lehigh Valley Comic Con one year. I never forgot it.
Yeah, and supposedly the story I heard is he was pitching it. Spielberg saw it, and he basically stole it. But I think he gave Dave storyboard work or whatever, and basically it's like,
They'll pay you out for it.
right, yeah, don't. That's what Hollywood does.
They just buy it.
They just steal
Mhm.
from each other, right? That's why now you can't even go and see some people if you don't have an agent because of that.
Right. I didn't have an agent for any of this, man. I didn't even know you needed an agent until 2022. I didn't. I just was rocking it. You know what I mean? And then
Awesome.
I was like bored because the show was dead for me. And I went over to Scott Dumbier, or is it Dumbier? Or went over to him and I was like, "You're doing portfolio reviews?" He's like, "Yeah." I bring over 4 portfolios. Like, plunk. I'm like, "Go through my stuff, man. I'm going to hear like what you got to say." And he was like going through everything, and he was like, right away, he was like, "You fucked up already. You're showing me old stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's all I got," you know? So he reviewed it anyway, and he looked through it. I'm like waiting for him to trash me, man. I'm the youngest guy in line. There's all these guys from like South America getting reviews. And I'm like, I'm waiting to hear all the negative. And he didn't have one negative thing to say. And he was like comparing me to Pusshead and some other guys and stuff like that. And I was like, I love all that stuff. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you know what you need to do? You need to go over to, he's like, you need to meet this dude, Felix, at Felix Comic Art. He's like, you tell him I sent you. And I was like, really? And I was like, all right, cool. So 2 months I like was stewing on it. Like, should I send him my stuff? You know? And then I sent him the stuff and he was like, hey man, stuff looks great. He's like, but my client list is so long. I've got a waiting list. So I did all that work with no agent just to get to a point where I found that I needed an agent and then got sent to the big agent. And then it was too late. But it was still cool to get the good review. Cause I mean, I've been listening to the guys that I love trash my shit for 20 years.
So, well, Buzz, how does that shape you going into the future? Like now that you're kind of pointing in another direction, are you kind of like building up your reserves? Like, you know, let me line up a good agent and, you know, some entertainment lawyers for the next round.
I don't know the first thing about it, and I'm happy to get some advice. You know, it's later from all 3 of you. Just send me a message or something if it's in your head. Crawl. Because I'm kind of looking at it all. You know, in 2023, we had a family scare. My wife survived a massive brain tumor, and she's great, you know, now. But like, it kind of slowed me down to just kind of like, whoo, okay, I just did all this stuff. And even Ken is like, dude, I think I'm done with conventions. I think I'm going to sit back a bit and just do this license stuff. And then I got the license stuff, and so we just been chilling. I got a pitch out with a buddy now for adapting a novel for paid work, but you know, I'm not jumping into anything, you know, that I'm not like either getting paid for or I'm like all about, because I kind of just did the last 15 years of like extreme running with all this stuff. You know what I mean? Right.
I also love that we're at a stage where you have options.
Yeah.
You can say no thanks.
Yeah, I do a lot of covers. You know, I do a lot of like exclusive prints for people because they're quick, and I'm tattooing still. I would love to work on another Living Corpse book with Ken, but I won't do it without him. I refuse to. You know, we develop stuff on the side for fun. You know, we do page layouts, 3 or 4 page layouts for something, or concept something out, and just kind of sit on it. But yeah, I think we're just sort of waiting to see what happens with the Diamond thing and the book distribution. Then I'm going to know what I'm going to do next. You know what I mean? Like how that's going to go.
There was something that just dropped an hour or 2 before the show where Diamond now is supposedly, from what I heard, I saw posted that they're going to start selling people's stock, which they're not supposed to be able to do, and not pay.
Yeah, they're not paying the publishers. Yeah, and they're selling the books anyway.
Right.
And now they're all finding out I have not been getting paid on 3 or 4 invoices, and they're just selling them anyway. And they're going to comic shops and being like, "Hey, are you selling books through them because they're my books?" So there's like a last minute kind of stabbing happening, you know, at the end of all this. I don't know where it's going to land. You know, we only sell maybe 2,500 copies of something, so we're super low. Yeah. I don't know if someone's going to pick us up or not, but Kahurik is a diehard. He'll figure it out. He always finds a way to stay alive in it. And I'm just in his corner. You know, I'm his cut man. Like, let's do this, let's do that. You know what I mean? We have fun working together, and it's enough work for me to stay in comics with him, and because Ken's over at Dynamite.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like the print is just going to remain choppy. So it seems like if you're going to do stuff now, you might have to look at, you know, doing web comics or doing stuff on YouTube, or, you know, I think that's just sort of the way everything is moving now. I mean,
yeah,
because if you can't get your idea, you've got to put your idea where the most eyeballs are. And if the most eyeballs are no longer in comic book stores,
Right.
it's, and then you're either doing what? You're doing a Kickstarter or there's a lot of old media that's really struggling now. Hollywood is struggling, animation is struggling.
Yeah.
People I know haven't had work in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Top level people.
Yeah.
I've
seen it. Yeah.
They're putting on their Instagram and their Blue Skies, hey, I'm looking for work.
Yeah.
Right. People that never had to look for work.
I know.
Right. So I think we're really at a point, and then you've got the whole AI thing on top of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. People are going to start making AI comics.
They're going to try to. Yeah.
Right. And they're doing AI animation already.
Mm-hmm.
I see tons of stuff on my Instagram in the last month. There's all this superhero stuff where they're doing, fan fiction stuff with AI.
It's a big lawsuit coming after Midjourney right now from Universal and Disney.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube, but
I think what they will do is they will settle it where they get a custom designed software by those companies that works for Disney or works for
right. Yeah, they do the military thing where the government, they just absorb it. Yeah,
right. They'll say, okay, we won't sue you, but you got to work for us. You gotta make this stuff for us.
right.
You
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think I personally, I'm not really into AI. To me, it's dull. I'm an original art collector myself. I'm surrounded by Kevin Eastman, Jay Lee, Sakai. I have it all over my house. I love original art. So when I look at AI, I'm like, yeah, it's going to have its run. It's going to do this or do that, and it's going to take over this and blah, blah, blah. But I think people are eventually going to get bored of it. And some people won't. Some people are looking for, I've been friends with a guy at Pixar, and the first thing he asked me when he found that I drew comics was, are you doing AI? I'm like, no. He's like, out there's this moral compass that they're trying to wrestle into position to be able to get permission to use AI. They want to be cool with it. And I personally feel like it'll do its thing, but it all looks the same to me. Like I kind of get tired of seeing it. It's like that metal song that you can't understand the lyrics to or read the logo, and the whole album sounds like that. Like for one or two songs to rage out to, then I'm like, dude, turn that off.
Yeah.
It all looks wet. It all looks wet.
Looks wet. Yeah, it looks wet and drippy, and like it's covered in oil. And
I like that. It all looks wet. All right, that's a great segue into lightning round, question palooza time. So, Buzz, you know how this works for all of your people that came in on the slipstream because you're on tonight. Let's explain how this works. Stone Cold Steve Conley is going to ask Buzz a barrage of questions from the chat, and Buzz is going to give us tight snack-size answers, and then we're going to start wrapping up. Steve, you have the floor.
All right, here we go. I'm just going to take it from the top. There's going to be no order here. Don't expect a theme or any rhyme or reason, but we're going to start with Paul Pate from YouTube. Hello, Paul. Are face tattoos only done by very senior artists? And are butt tattoos done by beginners? He asked a good question before, but he earned this one.
Face tattoos, I don't do until you're completely tattooed. So you have to earn your bodysuit before I'll put it on your face. If you come in and have a face tattoo and a hand tattoo, I call it the Warped Tour sleeve, because when you take your hoodie off, you don't have any other tattoos. You're just trying to look like hard right away. So you have to earn your hardness by getting like hard areas done first. When it comes to butts, I try not to do them. I have done them. They're very tender, like on the skin, and it's just not like the most pleasing thing to do. So I'd rather wait for like the next skull to come in or something.
Fantastic.
I'm still in the butt part.
P Features on YouTube. Do you still do monster makeup?
Every Halloween, I usually go pretty hard, like on makeup, and I'm teaching my youngest stepdaughter now how to do it at 16, and I still keep stock of like the mortician's wax and the latex, and I'm constantly thinking of like costumes to make. I have like a bat creature now sculpted that's just been sitting fully sculpted, rendered. Yeah, I'm always doing something. My house looks like Halloween year round. It's stupid. But
did that school also include like things like armatures and mechanical bits?
Yeah, I got more into actual makeup application, like Lon Chaney. not so much the servo stuff and RC stuff. Because as I went to Hollywood and Canada, they only look for guys who are like masters at one thing to do that job.
Oh.
There's a set of dentures that need made. They get a guy who's like awesome at making dentures.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I was more of like a little bit of everything. And so I learned kit makeup, which is like the Lon Chaney thing where you come in with like a box of stuff and just start making somebody into something, is what I mostly still do.
Wow.
So I feel like with that stuff, the old stuff, if you cast it in light and shadow, it still looks just as cool as the most expensive, high-tech sculpted silicone thing ever in full light, you know?
Wow, that's great. Thank you for that question, P Features. John Menti on YouTube. Does your style change when shifting between skin and paper? Like, in what ways does a tattoo gun change your approach to a piece?
Yeah. Usually we'll go simpler in the tattoo. Not like, again, in comics, you can line and texture and splatter and put little textures and stuff and go over with white. In tattooing, you want to keep things high contrast and simplified. We call it a tattoo machine, not a gun. So that's like not related to anything criminal or anything like that. But yeah, I think I try to, I flesh out shapes like you do, you know, in comics. I do the same thing with a tattoo design. If it's like a dagger next to a skull with a leaf coming in or something like that. So I still draw in blue line, like as a tattoo artist, which just kind of like stuck with me. And everyone always asks me that, but and then I explain the whole non-photo thing. So yeah, I do a lot of rough sketches in blue paper. I don't really draw on an iPad. It just doesn't, it feels alien to me. I can, and you know, I think people do cool stuff on it, but the style shift is in simplicity, more using shading for value versus like contour lines or cross hatching to develop the value.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for the question, John. Oh, sorry, my machine hiccup there. Is a question from Michael. Hello, Michael on YouTube. Is there an issue with licenses and IP usage for tattoos?
A lot of people have tried to create an issue with that because tattooing is so popular. They've tried to make an issue about it. It doesn't really go anywhere because the sovereignty of the individual wearing the tattoo is who you have to go after. And the choice to do that is kind of free will. And so it's such a thin line area. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with photography, like a photographer who has like a really famous picture and then like a really famous tattooer will do the tattoo. And then the photographer's like, I want some money for using the picture, but like, it doesn't really hold up in court. I don't think many things have resulted from it.
That's interesting. Thanks for
if anything, there's more plagiarism on design than there is on anything else. You can have an artist who has a style that is very signature to them, and many, many people will just bootleg that thing and tattoo the same exact thing. That is more of a fiery subject than tattooing Mickey Mouse. Disney at one point tried to stop official tattoo brand Flash, the Flash on the walls. Mm-hmm. They tried to stop people from putting Mickey on it, but it's like, you know, the toothpaste is out of the tube. So
it's the other tattoo artists who've created something unique. Someone ripping that off. That's kind of the bigger faux pas.
That's a very big faux pas. And the only way to really handle it is in person with fisticuffs. And some people do, you know, I kind of look at it like, well, I've already done it and put it out there, so I'm on to the next thing. But other people get pretty salty, especially if they're limited in skill set on style. If they have like one thing they do well, they get a little territorial around it. I do all styles, so I just move.
That's great. Eternity Forever. Hello on YouTube. Do you recommend practicing on pigskin first?
Pigskin. So pigskin goes bad in a couple of days. It'll start to smell real bad in your shop. So you got to get it tattooed and get it done and get it outside so it can cure. I have done them. You have to nail them to wood or they'll just curl up like dried flesh.
Whoa. Are there artificial surfaces to practice on?
There are now. There wasn't when I was learning. When I was learning, I just got two hillbillies that didn't care what it looked like. And I just tattooed two guys until they started looking good. And I'm still tattooing one of them to this day. But there's fake skin now. There's fake limbs. Silicone is very difficult to tattoo. But it is emulative of it. You can get a start there. Obviously, you don't have like a laundry list of people outside that are willing to be like plunk down and get a piece. So you got to do something. Pigskin's a little harder to come by. You got to go to the butcher. It's slippery too. So like as you're working on pigskin, it's like sliding all over the place. Whereas like the silicone is non-reactive. So it's like right there. The pigskin does take the ink like real skin though. But I don't like to deal with a lot of like rotten meat in the shop, you know, after a while.
Do you kind of like dry that out, make some cracklings for the shop?
Yeah, I have a wolf head I did for my wife that I like nailed to like a plaque, and it's still in the house somewhere. But it just turns kind of clear and hard. It doesn't hold up. You can put it in a jar with embalming fluid, and it'll like float forever in there, and you can look at it whenever you want.
You're blowing Steve's mind.
Fantastic. Halloween year round is what I'm hearing. That's fantastic.
You can do a very realistic portrait of somebody's face and then put it in a jar.
That'd be cool, like an optical illusion.
Yeah.
All right, going over to comics, leaving tattoos behind for a minute. Pulp to Pixels on the YouTube. When you and Ken work together, how do you keep the style so consistent when I know you guys swap inking and penciling duties?
That's a great question, because in the early days for the 0 issue, which was black and white from Kablam, to the first issue, which was full color from Zenescope, we had this idea that we were going to switch duties. We plotted everything together. He would do thumbnails. I would blow them up and pencil them. And then the next issue we were going to flip. And what we realized about 2 issues in, that we were like, all right, what works best is this, we plot together. Ken does thumbnails. I do the pencils. His inking was cleaner than mine, and I just liked the way it looked and printed. I was still in that McFarlane era, putting too much in there. And so he had that slick, simplified look, and I liked it. And I learned clean inking from watching him ink the pencils. And so we just felt that was the way to go. So from layout to pencil, we have the same artistic influences. My comics were always organized by artists, not by title. And so we drew together all the time. And, he had ways of doing things, and I would like swipe it and do it too. And so we just osmosis symbiotically kind of had the same style. And I love that about our relationship and the work. And the only bad side to it was people were getting us confused all the time. Like, who was who?
There aren't a lot of there aren't a lot of teams like that. That's fantastic. Thanks for the question, Pulp to Pixels. We got Jason Colatriano on YouTube. Buzz, describe your dream project and what kind of team you'd pull together for it.
That is an awesome question and a big dream to put together. I'd probably work with like
JAMAR Nicholas.
The crew here, the crew on the show. I don't know, man. I've never really thought about it. I think I'm already working on some dream stuff with the horror licenses. I always wanted to do comics and horror somehow, so I think I'm kind of achieving it with that. And I'd love to do more corpse and bring guys in that I look up to as artists too. I'd love to have guys at some point draw the character. I have a sketchbook actually that is almost completely full of sketches of living corpse from every comic book artist I get my hands on. Mike's done one. I got to get one from you, Steve, if you're around. Jamar's in there a couple times. So I love to see that all these guys like doing the character. Perez did one. Wow. Eric Powell did one and was like, I'm not sketching. And somebody somehow got a sketch from him for me for the book. I've got a William Stout one, which is awesome because he's like the Tarman zombie guy from Return of the Living Dead, the designer, and everybody knows him, from comics. But so that was a dream to have that. So yeah, I think doing another living corpse thing and then bringing in all the friends. Everybody wants to do one page or something.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for the question, Jason. Oh boy, what is that one? How about this one? Pulp to Pixels has a follow-up. Where can people pick up your books, like the Hex Files book?
So you can get them from me. Hit me up on Instagram at BuzzCorpse. I'll be happy to fill the bag with swag for you. After years of having other people put it out and not seeing the money, I was like, we're going to Kickstarter. And then after doing like a lot of great stuff on Kickstarter and having a lot of fun over there, we've just been kind of doing them ourselves and keeping it limited runs. If it's one thing I learned from a lot of guys in the biz was, the indie guys, like, is doing short runs, keeping it simple, and making it limited. You know what I mean? Not like doing 5,000 copies, like sitting in my attic getting wet. 1,000 copies, stuff like that. So yeah, you can hit me up. The prices aren't crazy. I think I sell the Hex Files for $5. You know what I mean? Like, if you want Ken to sign it, you got to find him. He's in Jersey somewhere. If you want Mick Alani to sign it, good luck. You know what I mean? Like, but, I have a stack of them. You guys can hit me up. I don't have everything. We have been around a while enough that I've just sold out of stuff. You can get stuff on eBay. Some of the first trades, some of the first 6-issue minis. But I have plenty of Hex Files.
That's great. And we got some more tattoo questions kind of snuck in here. Do you recommend tattooing yourself to practice?
Well, you have, Dio, quite a bit for 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, you can, if you have the dedication to drop down on yourself and do that, I got a lot of respect for that. That's quite a thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a great place to start if you can tolerate the pain. But the angles are weird, so you're limited to what you can do on yourself. So it's easier to do it on other people. It's kind of like pulling your own teeth. You'd want somebody else to pull your tooth. You don't want to pull your own tooth out.
Yeah.
Dio has moved on to not. He does still tattoo himself, and he's actually killing it. He's doing really good.
That's amazing. Thanks for the question, Dio did. I think you touched on this, or you mentioned this. P Features asked, "Hey Buzz, are you open to having an apprentice?" I think
I got one right now, and he'll be my apprentice until I'm probably done tattooing. I don't know if I can do 2 because I'm starting kind of late. But my mentor told me my art was good, but he took me on to teach me how to tattoo for one reason, because after talking to me, he felt like I was someone who could teach. And I was really young when I heard that, and I was like, I'm not really want to be a teacher. I want to be an artist. But all these years later, it like came back into my crawl space. Like, oh yeah, he was like talking about that, and he said, and there's no point in me teaching a tattoo if you can't teach somebody else and pass it on. And so, yeah, so one good apprentice is worth more to me than 6 bad ones, that go and open up a business down the street.
That's great. El Jamal, who I just saw in Heroes Con, and again, just didn't recognize. He had gray. I didn't expect it. Threw me off.
Very gray. Very gray.
Somehow we've all gotten a little bit older. How many jars do you have, Buzz? I presume a business of formaldehyde
and faces.
I don't have any, but I have left a few at shops in the past. I should probably do one.
And this question, I think Jamar just put this in here to taunt me. Jared Warmack. Hello, Jared, on YouTube. Will you tattoo me live on the stream next time? That's
maybe not next time, but we can always do it if you want. You come to the shop; it's a cool spot.
And that's lightning round.
You did it.
You survived.
I love it. Good job. Buzz, we're going to start wrapping you up. We had a great time tonight. I have a couple of really quick questions for you, and then we'll let you get out of here. We've had an exciting time. People were really engaged and really enthused by your career. Awesome. Even talking about tattoo art, which there's some really interesting overlap that I don't think a lot of people think about, and that's why we bring these pros on. I wanted to ask you about how kind of like tattooing is, I don't want to say trending because that sounds like very like gauche, but like it's popular now. Like a lot of stuff that was very underground is very popular now. And now with horror, I'm starting to see horror is trending too.
Yeah.
Like Junji Ito, horror manga and things like that. How do you feel about the genre like bubbling up?
I think it lets in a lot of the like. You get a little too much of it, and it starts to all kind of mix together and be the same. Mm-hmm. I don't want to downplay anybody's efforts to do it, but I come from like a cult classic background. I worked in VHS stores. I'm still collecting VHS. There's VHS festivals at drive-ins. I'm still a part of the nerdy niche underground of it. And now that it's like trending, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but you just have to. There's so much coming out. So like what might look cool when you get into it is like, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that, you know what I mean? So horror is where Hollywood started. Their first big blockbuster movies were Frankenstein and Dracula. It's the first crossover universe. We talk about it a lot on the podcasts, on That Comic podcast, about it being the first crossover universe. And they made it entertainment made its boom in horror. And so I think it's always going to have a place. I think there's always going to be new people coming in. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. People are making moves with iPhones now and stuff like that. I think my take on it is just put some substance in there, make it come from a place that is a story worth telling instead of just retelling other stuff verbatim, because that will catch on too, but there's a lot of it, it can kind of, when things get saturated, things get a little dull. So I'd say, look, when we were doing Corpse, we always tried to come from a perspective of, well, what are we not seeing? Mm-hmm. So let's make something we're not seeing. We didn't see a comic book where the zombie was the main character other than like Simon Garth or things like that, So we made that character for that reason. So I think when it comes to horror, you want to add to it, not just detract and copy. So bring in like folklore, you know, all science fiction is coming from folklore, you know, so bring in something that you haven't seen, that you're not seeing a lot of, and try to do that as an idea is what I would suggest to people who want to do horror or the horror scene. When it comes to the collectivity or the fandom, I love it. The more fans, the better, you know, makes it look like a Kiss concert of horror, you know.
I love it. All right. Last thing for me. Shout out your podcast. I know you just spoke on it quickly, but you want to go into a little more detail.
Yeah.
About the podcast.
Thatcomicpodcast.com. And we're on Instagram. We're on all media platforms. Really cool show over there. We cover news, what's trending. Everybody's reading new books on Wednesday and reviewing them. And those titles change. Some of us read the same books. Some of us read different books. We post every day. We love comments, negative and positive. So hang out with us. Say your piece. Join in. And join the party, if you will, because we're just fans that, you know, are so passionate about this stuff that we get together once a week just to catch up on like what we're into, what's new, what's hot, what's dumb. You know what I mean? And just kind of goof on stuff like that. But yeah, That Comic Podcast. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you. And one last twirl around the sun. Please follow Buz on Instagram. You're killing it on the gram. I love it. Buz, we had a fantastic time hanging out with you tonight. We'd love to have you back. Tell Ken to come with you next time.
I'll try to twist him into it.
He's being camera shy this time, but we'll forgive him.
He's a good guy, yeah.
I know, that's my man. I love you guys. You know,
thank you for the support of years from all of you. Yeah,
we were down the road for a long time, buddy,
Yeah,
and I'm glad to see you flourishing, and I look forward to whatever happens next. All right.
Thanks
Sorry. All right. We're gonna let you get out of here. Let's do our outros and we'll go. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. We don't know what we're doing yet. You'll be the first to know. Thank you for hanging out with us. And we're at the end of the road, you guys. So make sure you wash those Kirby hands. Put those Kirby hands up, Buz. There you go. All right, guys. That was great. Thank you. See you next week.
See you next week.